I walked into that restaurant knowing my life was about to explode, carrying a gift bag with red lace lingerie that wasn't mine, ready to hand it to my husband's mistress right in front of her entire family during their celebration dinner. My name is Sarah. I'm 32 years old, and up until 3 weeks ago, I thought I had the perfect marriage. My husband Mark and I had been together for 8 years, married for 5. We lived in a nice suburb of Seattle, had good jobs, talked about starting a family soon. Everything seemed fine until that Tuesday afternoon, when I borrowed his car because mine was in the shop. I reached under the passenger seat looking for my sunglasses, and instead found a Victoria's Secret bag tucked way back. Inside was the most beautiful red lace lingerie set I'd ever seen, complete with a matching robe, all in a size that definitely wasn't mine. I'm a medium. This was an extra small. The receipt was still inside, purchased 2 days before our anniversary, except he'd given me a necklace for our anniversary, not lingerie. My hands shook as I sat in that car in the grocery store parking lot, staring at that red lace. The fabric was so delicate, so expensive, so clearly chosen with care. Mark had never bought me anything like this in our entire relationship. He always said lingerie shopping made him uncomfortable, that he preferred I choose my own. But apparently, he had no problem shopping for someone else. I felt like I couldn't breathe, like the air had turned to concrete in my lungs. Cars kept pulling in and out around me, people going about their normal days while mine was shattering. I didn't confront him right away. I know some people would have immediately, but I needed to know everything first. I needed to know who she was, how long it had been going on, how deep this betrayal went. So I became someone I never thought I'd be. I checked his phone while he slept. I looked through his emails. I tracked his location. And if you're enjoying this story and want to hear how it all unfolds, please hit that subscribe button. We're working toward our goal of 1,000 subscribers, and your support means everything to this channel. It took me 5 days to figure out who she was. Her name was Jessica. She worked at the same tech company as Mark, but in a different department. 26 years old, blonde, petite, everything I wasn't. I found their messages, months of them, talking about meeting up during lunch breaks, staying late at the office together, weekend conferences that I now realized he'd lied about. They had pet names for each other. He called her JJ, and she called him M. Reading those messages felt like swallowing glass. He told her things he'd never told me, shared feelings about our marriage that he'd hidden from me completely. He complained that I was too focused on my career, that I didn't make him feel desired anymore, that the spark was gone. Meanwhile, he'd never once mentioned any of this to me. He just went out and found someone new. The worst part was reading how he described their relationship. He talked about leaving me, about starting fresh with her. He said she made him feel young again, alive, like he could be himself. I sat on our bathroom floor reading those words, trying not to make noise while I cried because he was asleep in our bed just a few feet away. This man I'd built a life with, who I'd supported through job changes and family deaths, who I'd chosen every single day for 8 years, had been planning his exit strategy with a woman who didn't even know what his favorite movie was. But here's what really got me. Jessica wasn't hiding what she was doing. I found her Instagram, and she'd posted photos from places I recognized. Restaurants where Mark had told me he was having business dinners. She'd tagged the locations, posted them publicly, not caring who saw. And in her bio, she had her full name, Jessica Martinez, and she wasn't private at all. That's how I learned about the family dinner. Her sister had posted about it 2 days before, tagging Jessica and about 15 other people. Big family celebration at Anthony's seafood restaurant downtown, Friday night at 7, celebrating their parents' 30th wedding anniversary. The post was public, the location was tagged, everyone was invited to like and comment. It was like the universe was handing me an opportunity on a silver platter. And your subscription could help us reach more people with stories like this one. So if you haven't already, click that subscribe button now. I thought about what to do for those 2 days. Part of me wanted to just file for divorce and walk away with whatever dignity I had left. But another part of me, the part that was so angry I could barely see straight, wanted her to feel even a fraction of what I was feeling. I wanted her family to know what kind of person she was. I wanted her to experience public humiliation the way I'd been privately humiliated every time Mark kissed me goodbye and then went to meet her. So I made a plan. I told Mark I had a work dinner Friday night, something I couldn't get out of. He seemed relieved, probably because he'd been planning to see her. I spent that Friday afternoon getting ready like I was going into battle. I wore my best dress, did my makeup perfectly, styled my hair. I looked good, better than I had in months. Maybe that was part of it too, wanting to show up looking like I had myself together even though I was falling apart inside. I put that red lingerie set back in its Victoria's Secret bag, placed it inside a nice gift bag with tissue paper, and attached a card. On the card, I wrote just one sentence in my neatest handwriting. I believe you forgot this in my husband's car. I signed it with my full name, Sarah Mitchell, and our home address. The drive to Anthony's seafood restaurant felt both endless and too short. It was a beautiful Seattle evening, the sun just starting to set over the water, casting everything in golden light. The kind of evening that should have been romantic, the kind Mark and I used to take walks during when we first started dating. Now I was driving to confront his mistress at her parents' anniversary dinner, and the absurdity of it all almost made me laugh. I parked across the street and watched the restaurant for a few minutes. I could see through the big windows to where a large group was gathered in a private section. Balloons, a banner, a cake on the table. A real celebration with real people who had no idea what was about to happen. For a second, I almost chickened out. These were innocent people. Her parents celebrating 3 decades of marriage while I was about to reveal that their daughter was helping destroy someone else's marriage. But then I thought about all those messages. About Mark planning to leave me. About Jessica posting public photos of their dates, while I sat at home thinking my husband was working late. I thought about that red lingerie, and how much thought he'd put into choosing it for her, when he'd never put that kind of effort into surprising me. And I got out of the car. If you're invested in this story and want to see what happens next, subscribing to the channel really helps us grow toward that 1,000 subscriber goal we're working on. Walking into that restaurant felt surreal. The hostess smiled at me and I smiled back, saying I was joining the Martinez party. She directed me to the private section without questioning it, because I looked like I belonged there, like someone who'd been invited. I could hear laughter and conversation as I got closer, the sounds of a happy family gathering. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The room went a bit quieter as I walked in, the way it does when a stranger enters a private party. About 20 people were there, ranging from young kids to elderly grandparents. And there she was, Jessica, sitting near the middle of the table wearing a blue dress that probably cost more than my car payment. She was even prettier in person than in her photos, with perfect skin and shiny hair and the kind of easy confidence that comes from never having your world turned upside down. She looked at me with polite confusion, probably thinking I was lost or looking for a different party. I walked straight up to her before my courage could fail me, holding out that gift bag with both hands like I was presenting something precious. The whole room was watching now, conversations dying as everyone tried to figure out who I was and what was happening. "Jessica Martinez?" I said, and my voice came out steady and clear, which surprised me because inside I was shaking. She nodded, still confused but starting to look uncertain. "I'm Sarah Mitchell. I believe you know my husband, Mark." I watched her face change as she realized who I was, all the color draining out of it. "You left something in his car, and I wanted to make sure you got it back." I handed her the gift bag. She didn't take it at first, just stared at it like it might explode, but her mother, sitting next to her, reached for it with a smile, clearly thinking this was some kind of friend stopping by with a gift. "How thoughtful," her mother said, taking the bag and starting to hand it to Jessica. "What is it, honey?" "Mom, don't," Jessica said. But it was too late. Her mother had already pulled out the tissue paper and was reaching inside. I watched as she pulled out that red lace lingerie, holding it up for a second before she realized what it was. Her face went through about 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. Confusion, recognition, shock, disgust, and finally anger. The room went completely silent. Everyone was staring at the lingerie hanging from her mother's hand, then at Jessica, then at me. One of the kids asked what it was, and their parent quickly shushed them. Jessica's father stood up, his face turning red. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, looking at me like I was some kind of crazy person who'd crashed their party. "The meaning," I said, and I was proud of how calm I sounded, "is that your daughter has been having an affair with my husband for the past 6 months. He bought her this lingerie 2 weeks ago. I found it in his car. I thought she might want it back since he clearly put a lot of thought into choosing it. If you're gripped by this story and want to help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers, hitting that subscribe button takes just a second and means the world to us." Jessica stood up so fast her chair fell over backward. "You're insane," she said, but her voice was shaking and her face was still pale. "I don't know what you're talking about. I barely know your husband. We just work together." "JJ," I said, using the nickname Mark called her in all those messages, and I watched her freeze. "That's what he calls you, right? And you call him M. You meet during lunch breaks. You've been to the Olive Garden on 5th Street together 4 times, the steakhouse downtown twice, that little Italian place near the office at least 6 times. Should I keep going? Because I have screenshots of every single message, every single plan you two made, every single lie he told me so he could be with you." Her mother dropped the lingerie on the table like it had burned her. "Jessica Marie Martinez," she said in a voice that could cut steel. "Is this true?" The use of her full name, the tone, it was pure mother confronting a child who'd done something unforgivable. I almost felt sorry for Jessica in that moment, but then I remembered those messages where she'd laughed about me, where she'd called me the wife obstacle, where she'd talked about what their life would be like once Mark finally left me. I didn't know he was married. Jessica tried, but her voice was weak, and everyone in that room could tell she was lying. Her sister, sitting across from her, made a disgusted sound. "Oh, please, Jess. You knew. You've known the whole time. I saw his wedding ring when you pointed him out to me at that company picnic." The room erupted. Her mother started crying. Her father demanded answers, his voice getting louder with each question. Her siblings started arguing with her, their spouses joining in. The grandparents looked horrified and confused. Kids were getting upset because the adults were upset. It was chaos, exactly the kind of scene I'd hoped to create. And somehow it felt both satisfying and hollow at the same time. Jessica's father turned to me, and his anger had shifted to something that looked like shame. "I am so sorry," he said. "We had no idea. This is not how we raised our daughter. We don't condone this kind of behavior." "I know you don't," I said. "That's why I came here. Because she clearly doesn't care about destroying my marriage. But maybe she'll care about destroying your opinion of her." I looked directly at Jessica, who had tears streaming down her face now, her perfect makeup ruining. "You wanted him so badly, you can have him. But I wanted you to know, that everyone who matters to you knows, and that actions have consequences." I turned to leave, feeling both powerful and completely empty. But Jessica's voice stopped me. "He said he loved me," she said, and she sounded so young, so hurt. "He said you didn't understand him, that the marriage was over anyway, that he was going to leave you." I turned back to look at her. "He's not going to leave me," I said. "Or he wasn't, until I leave him. But you know what the really sad thing is? He probably did say he loved you. He probably believed it while he was saying it. That's what makes this even worse. You weren't just some fling. You actually mattered to him. And he still chose to lie to both of us, to keep both of us on strings. to risk everything for something he was too much of a coward to actually commit to. If this story is resonating with you, and you want to support the channel, we'd love to have you as a subscriber. We're working toward 1,000 subscribers, and every single one counts. Jessica sat back down heavily, and her mother had moved away from her, like she couldn't stand to be close to her anymore. "I think you should go," her father said to Jessica, his voice cold. "This is your mother's and my anniversary dinner. You've done enough damage. We'll talk about this later." "Daddy, please," Jessica started, but he held up his hand. "Go," he repeated. "Now." I watched as Jessica gathered her purse and coat, her face blotchy from crying, her hands shaking. She had to walk past me to get to the door, and when she did, she stopped. "I'm sorry," she whispered, so quietly only I could hear. "I really am sorry." "I'm sure you are," I said. "Sorry you got caught anyway." She flinched like I'd slapped her, and then she was gone, practically running out of the restaurant. I turned back to her family, all of them still staring at me with various expressions of shock and sympathy. "I really am sorry for ruining your celebration," I said to her parents. 30 years of marriage is an incredible achievement. I hope you can still enjoy your evening." Her mother wiped her eyes and gave me a sad smile. "Don't apologize, dear. You didn't ruin anything. Our daughter did. I'm just sorry you had to go through this." She stood up and came over to me, and before I knew what was happening, she hugged me. This stranger whose family dinner I'd just crashed and exploded hugged me like she understood exactly what I was feeling. "You deserve better," she whispered, "and I hope you find it." I left the restaurant in a daze. The adrenaline that had carried me through the confrontation was wearing off, and I was starting to shake. I made it to my car before the tears started, sitting in the driver's seat with the engine off, just sobbing. It felt good and terrible at the same time, like lancing a wound. It hurt, but I could feel the poison coming out. My phone buzzed, Mark calling, then Jessica calling, then Mark again. I turned my phone off. I wasn't ready to deal with either of them yet. I just drove, no particular destination in mind, just driving through Seattle as the sun set completely and the city lights came on. I ended up at Gasworks Park, sitting on a bench overlooking the water, watching boats go by and trying to figure out what came next. The next few days were a blur. Mark came home that night after I did, having clearly talked to Jessica. He tried to deny it at first, then minimize it, then blame me. We'd grown apart. I worked too much. I didn't pay attention to him anymore. Classic cheater excuses. I listened to all of it with this strange detachment, like I was watching a movie about someone else's life. When he was done, I simply said, "I want a divorce. I've already contacted a lawyer." His face crumbled. "Sarah, please, we can work through this. It didn't mean anything. I love you. I choose you." All the things he should have been saying for the past 6 months instead of sneaking around. "It meant enough that you bought her expensive lingerie and planned to leave me," I said. "It meant enough that you lied to me every single day. It meant enough that you let me think we were happy while you were complaining about me to her. So no, we can't work through this. I'm done. If you're still with me on this journey and want to see how stories like this continue to unfold, please consider subscribing to help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Your support means everything. He tried everything over the next weeks, begging, crying, sending flowers to my work, showing up at places he knew I'd be. He told me he'd ended things with Jessica, that he'd been an idiot, that he'd go to counseling, anything I wanted. But I was beyond that point. Something had broken in me when I found that lingerie, something that all his apologies and promises couldn't fix. It was trust, obviously, but it was more than that. It was respect. It was the belief that we were partners, that we were on the same team. Once I realized we weren't, there was no going back. Jessica tried to contact me too, through email since I'd blocked her number. She wrote long messages about how sorry she was, how she'd made a terrible mistake, how she'd believed everything Mark told her about our marriage being over. She said she understood if I hated her, but she hoped one day I might forgive her. I read the emails but never responded. What was there to say? Sorry doesn't unring the bell. Sorry doesn't give me back the months I spent being lied to. Sorry doesn't fix the fact that I'll never be able to trust the same way again. The divorce process was surprisingly straightforward. We didn't have kids. We kept our finances mostly separate, and Mark was feeling guilty enough to not fight me on anything. We divided everything down the middle, sold the house, went our separate ways. The whole thing took about 6 months from start to finish. 6 months to legally end what had taken 8 years to build. During that time, I learned some interesting things through mutual friends and social media. Jessica had been fired from her job. Apparently, the company had a strict policy about workplace relationships, especially ones that caused drama. Several people had found out what happened, and it had created a toxic work environment. Mark still worked there, but I heard he'd been passed over for a promotion he was expecting. Apparently, having your personal life explode publicly doesn't look great to upper management. I also heard that Jessica's family had essentially cut her off. Not completely, but she was no longer invited to family events. Her parents had stopped helping her financially, and her siblings barely spoke to her. That anniversary dinner had apparently been a turning point for them, a moment where they realized their daughter wasn't who they thought she was. Part of me felt bad about that. I hadn't meant to destroy her relationship with her family, but a bigger part of me thought it was exactly what she deserved. As for Mark and Jessica, I heard they tried to make it work for a while after everything imploded. I guess when you've burned down your entire life for someone, you want to believe it was worth it. But from what I understand, they lasted maybe 3 months before the relationship fell apart. Turns out a relationship built on lies and betrayal isn't a great foundation. Who knew? The hardest part of all of this wasn't the divorce or the betrayal or even the loneliness. It was rebuilding my sense of self. For 8 years, I'd been Mark's wife. I'd made decisions based on what was good for us as a couple. I'd compromised and adjusted and shaped myself around our relationship. Suddenly, being just Sarah again felt foreign. I had to figure out who I was on my own, what I liked, what I wanted, what made me happy without considering anyone else. I started going to therapy, which helped more than I expected. My therapist helped me see that while Mark's cheating was entirely his fault, there were patterns in our relationship that I'd ignored, red flags I'd dismissed. Not because I deserved to be cheated on, but because I needed to understand how I'd ended up in this situation so I wouldn't repeat the patterns in the future. We talked about communication, about speaking up when I was unhappy instead of assuming things would get better on their own, about not losing myself in a relationship. And if this story has kept you engaged and you'd like to help the channel grow, hitting that subscribe button would mean so much. We're building a community here and would love to have you as part of it as we work toward 1,000 subscribers. I threw myself into work, got a promotion I'd been putting off pursuing because it would mean longer hours, and I'd wanted to be home for Mark. Joke was on me there since he was using those home hours to cheat anyway. I reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with over the years, started going to yoga classes, took a solo trip to Portland that turned out to be exactly what I needed. Slowly, painfully, I started feeling like myself again. About a year after the divorce was finalized, I ran into Jessica at a coffee shop downtown. We saw each other at the same moment, and there was this awkward pause where neither of us knew what to do. She'd lost weight, looked tired, older than she had that night at the restaurant. I probably looked different too. I definitely felt different. She walked over to my table and I braced myself for confrontation, but she just said, "I know you don't want to talk to me, and I'm not going to bother you. I just wanted you to know that you were right about everything. He wasn't going to leave you. It wasn't real. And I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I really am sorry." Then she left before I could respond, and I sat there with my coffee, feeling oddly nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just a kind of detached sadness for both of us. Mark tried to get back in touch a few times over that year. A message here, an email there. Always some version of "I miss you" or "I made a mistake" or "Can we talk?" I never responded. There was nothing left to say. He'd made his choices, and I'd made mine. I wasn't interested in rehashing the past or giving him closure he didn't deserve. I'd moved on, truly moved on, and he wasn't part of my future in any capacity. The second year after the divorce was better. I dated a little, nothing serious, just remembering what it was like to meet new people and have first date butterflies. I bought a small condo in a neighborhood I loved, decorated it exactly how I wanted, without compromising with anyone. I adopted a cat named Pepper, who slept on my feet every night and demanded breakfast at 6 a.m. sharp. It was a good life, a peaceful life, a life that was entirely mine. I thought about that night at the restaurant sometimes, walking in with that gift bag and watching Jessica's world implode. There were moments I regretted it, moments when I wondered if I'd been cruel, if I'd gone too far. But mostly I didn't regret it, because that night was the night I'd taken my power back. For months I'd been the victim, the one being lied to, the one in the dark while everyone else knew what was happening. That night, I'd been the one with the information, the one making the choice, the one controlling the narrative. It wasn't pretty, and it wasn't kind, but it was what I needed to do to move forward. Would I recommend public confrontation to everyone in my situation? Probably not. Everyone has to handle betrayal in their own way, and what worked for me might not work for others. Some people need quiet dignity. Some people need to scream and throw things. Some people need to just walk away without a word. I needed to make them both face what they'd done, to ensure there were real consequences, to make absolutely sure they couldn't pretend it didn't matter. And that restaurant, that family dinner, that was the perfect opportunity to do exactly that. If you've stuck with this entire story and haven't subscribed yet, now would be a great time. We're so close to our goal of 1,000 subscribers, and every subscription helps us continue to bring you real stories from real people. Looking back now, almost 2 years out from that night, I can see it as a turning point. Not just in my relationship with Mark, which was over the moment I found that lingerie, even if I didn't fully realize it then, but in my relationship with myself. I'd spent so long being accommodating, being understanding, being the cool wife who didn't make waves or demand too much. I'd swallowed my unhappiness and told myself things would get better. I'd ignored my gut when it told me something was wrong, because I didn't want to be paranoid or jealous or difficult. That night, I stopped doing all of that. I listened to my anger, trusted my instincts, and acted on them without worrying about being polite or appropriate or ladylike. Was it messy? Absolutely. Did it cause a scene? Obviously. Do I wish I could have handled my marriage ending in some more dignified way? Sometimes. But I also know that I needed to do something big, something that matched the size of the betrayal I'd experienced. Finding out your husband is cheating is devastating. Finding out he's been planning to leave you, that he's been building a whole alternate life with someone else. That's not something you can process quietly in private. That needs an explosion. And the thing is, it worked. Not in terms of winning Mark back, obviously, because I didn't want him back. But in terms of processing my anger, of moving through my grief, of starting to heal. I'd done the thing, faced them both, said what I needed to say. After that, there was nowhere to go but forward. No more wondering if I should confront them. No more imagining what I'd say if I could. No more replaying scenarios in my head. It was done. Finished. Over. The legal end of the marriage was clean, but the emotional end was messier. I cycled through all the stages of grief, sometimes in order, sometimes all at once. Anger was easy. I'd been angry from the moment I found that lingerie. Denial was harder to get past because part of me kept thinking this couldn't really be happening, that I'd wake up and discover it was all a terrible nightmare. Bargaining was the worst. All those late-night thoughts about what I could have done differently, how I could have prevented this, what I should have seen coming. Depression hit around month 3 of the separation, when the anger had burned out, and all that was left was this overwhelming sadness for everything I'd lost. But eventually, finally, I got to acceptance. Not acceptance that what Mark did was okay or forgivable, but acceptance that it happened, that I couldn't change it, and that I had to build a new life with this reality. Acceptance that the marriage I thought I had never really existed, that I'd been in love with a version of Mark that maybe he'd never really been. Acceptance that I deserved better, and that better was out there somewhere, even if I hadn't found it yet. My friends and family were incredible through all of this. My mom flew out from Ohio and stayed with me for 2 weeks right after Mark moved out. She didn't say, "I told you so," even though she'd always thought Mark was a little too charming, a little too smooth. She just held me while I cried and made me eat when I didn't feel like eating and reminded me that I was strong enough to get through this. My best friend Emma canceled her vacation to stay with me, showing up with wine and ice cream and terrible rom-coms that we made fun of while crying. My colleagues at work covered for me when I had to leave early for lawyer meetings or when I just couldn't focus because my brain was stuck replaying memories and wondering where things went wrong. I learned a lot about people during that time. Some friends I thought were close kind of disappeared, maybe because they didn't know what to say, or maybe because they'd been friends with both of us and didn't want to choose sides. But other people, some I barely knew, showed up in ways I never expected. A woman from my yoga class started checking in on me, inviting me to coffee, eventually becoming one of my closest friends. My neighbor brought me homemade soup once a week for months. The paralegal at my lawyer's office sent me encouraging text messages before every court appearance. There's something about going through a crisis that shows you who your real people are. And slowly, day by day, I got better. The good minutes turned into good hours, then good days, then good weeks. I started waking up without that immediate heavy feeling in my chest. I stopped checking Mark's social media obsessively. I could think about our good memories without feeling bitter. I started believing that I'd be okay, that I'd be more than okay, that maybe someday I'd even be grateful this happened because it freed me from a relationship that wasn't serving me anymore. Before we wrap up, if you've connected with this story and want to help us grow, please subscribe to the channel. We're building toward 1,000 subscribers and would love your support in reaching that milestone. Dating again was strange. My first date post-divorce was with a guy I met at a work conference, a nice software engineer from Portland. We went to dinner and he was perfectly pleasant, but I spent the whole evening comparing him to Mark, looking for red flags, wondering if he was lying to me. I didn't give him a second chance even though he asked, because I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to trust someone new, wasn't ready to open myself up to the possibility of being hurt again. My second date was better. A teacher I met through Emma, funny and kind, and completely different from Mark. We went on 3 dates before I told him about the divorce, about the cheating, about the restaurant confrontation. I expected him to be turned off by all the drama, but instead, he said it sounded like I'd handled an impossible situation the best way I could. We dated for a few months, and it was good, but ultimately we wanted different things. He wanted kids soon, and I wasn't ready to even think about that. We parted as friends, and I was proud of myself for ending things before they got too serious, for being honest about what I wanted instead of just going along with what someone else wanted. There were a few other dates here and there, some better than others. One guy who talked about his ex-wife the entire time. Another who tried to invite himself up to my apartment on the first date. A really lovely accountant who I had zero chemistry with despite him being perfect on paper. Each experience taught me something about what I was looking for, what I needed, what I absolutely wouldn't tolerate. I was building standards, boundaries, a clear sense of what my next relationship needed to look like. And here's what I learned. I wasn't looking for perfection. I wasn't even looking for someone who never made mistakes. I was looking for someone honest, someone who communicated, someone who chose me every day and didn't make me wonder or worry or doubt. I was looking for someone who saw me as a partner, as an equal, as someone whose feelings and needs mattered as much as their own. I was looking for someone who did the work, who showed up, who proved through actions and not just words that I mattered to them. I also learned that I needed to be whole on my own first. For too long, I'd seen myself as half of a couple, incomplete without someone else. Now I was learning to be complete on my own, to enjoy my own company, to build a life that felt full and rich without needing someone else to validate it. When I eventually met someone new, I wanted it to be because they added to my life, not because they completed it. I was already complete. My therapist called this post-traumatic growth, the idea that sometimes we come out of terrible experiences stronger and wiser than we went in. I'd lost my marriage, lost years of my life, lost the future I thought I was building. But I'd gained self-knowledge, strength, resilience, clarity about what I wanted. I'd learned that I could survive the worst thing I'd ever been through and come out the other side still standing. That's not nothing. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd never borrowed Mark's car that day, if I'd never found that lingerie. Would he have eventually left me for Jessica? Would he have ended it with her and I'd have never known? Would it have continued indefinitely, with me living in ignorance while he lived a double life? Part of me thinks I would have figured it out eventually. The signs were there if I'd been looking. But another part of me wonders if I might have spent years not seeing what was right in front of me, trusting him because I wanted to believe our marriage was solid. In a weird way, finding that red lace was a gift. A terrible, painful gift, but a gift nonetheless. It forced me to see the truth, to face reality, to make choices I might have avoided otherwise. It gave me back control of my own life. And that night at the restaurant, as dramatic and confrontational as it was me taking that control and running with it. It was me saying I won't be lied to, I won't be betrayed, and there will be consequences for treating me this way. Would I do it again if I could go back? Honestly, I don't know. There are things I might do differently. Maybe I would have confronted them somewhere private instead of making a public scene. Maybe I would have just filed for divorce and moved on without any confrontation at all. Maybe I would have given Mark a chance to explain before I decided our marriage was over. But those are all maybes, hypotheticals, ideas about what I might do if I was a different person in a different situation. The truth is, I did what I did in that moment, as the person I was then, with the information and emotions I had. And I can't regret that. It was messy and dramatic, and probably not what a marriage counselor would recommend, but it was authentic. It was real. It was me processing my rage and hurt in the only way that made sense at the time. And it worked. It got me here, to this place where I'm okay, where I'm building a new life, where I'm learning to trust again, slowly and carefully. If you've made it this far in the story, thank you for listening. These kinds of experiences can feel very isolating, and sharing them helps. If you'd like to support the channel and help us reach 1,000 subscribers, clicking that subscribe button would mean the world. Now, almost 2 years later, I barely think about Mark and Jessica. They're footnotes in my story, not the main characters anymore. I don't know where they are or what they're doing, and I don't care. I don't hate them anymore, which is probably the biggest sign that I've healed. I don't wish them well exactly, but I don't wish them harm either. They're just people who made choices that hurt me, and I've moved past that hurt into something better. I'm not saying I'm grateful for what happened. I'm not going to pretend that getting cheated on was some kind of blessing in disguise. It sucked. It was horrible. It was one of the worst experiences of my life. But I am grateful for who I've become because of it. I'm stronger, clearer, more sure of myself and what I deserve. I don't settle anymore. I don't ignore red flags. I don't make myself smaller to make someone else comfortable. I show up fully as myself, and if someone doesn't like that, they're not my person. The last time I saw that red lingerie was when I gave it to Jessica at the restaurant. I don't know what she did with it afterward. Threw it away, probably, or maybe kept it as a reminder of the worst night of her life. I hope she learned something from all of this, that she grew and changed and became someone who wouldn't make those choices again. I hope she found a relationship that was honest and real, not built on lies and betrayal. I hope she apologized to her family and worked to rebuild those relationships. I hope, for her sake, that she became better. As for me, I'm dating someone new now. His name is David. He's a pediatric nurse, and he's nothing like Mark. He's steady where Mark was exciting, honest where Mark was charming, reliable where Mark was unpredictable. He knows about my divorce, about the cheating, about the restaurant confrontation. I told him on our third date, expecting him to run for the hills, but instead he said it sounded like I'd been incredibly brave. He said anyone who would cheat on me was an idiot, and that he'd spend every day proving he wasn't an idiot. We've been together for 6 months now, taking things slow, building trust gradually. I still have moments of panic, times when my brain tells me he must be lying, must be hiding something, must be too good to be true. But I'm working on it, learning to separate past trauma from present reality, choosing to trust until given a reason not to. David is patient with me, understands when I need reassurance, never makes me feel crazy for needing to verify things occasionally. He's teaching me that not all men are Mark, that healthy relationships exist, that I can have something real and honest and good. I don't know if David is forever. It's too soon to tell. But I know he's right for right now, and that's enough. I'm not rushing toward marriage or commitment, or any of the milestones I thought I needed to hit by certain ages. I'm just living my life, enjoying each day, building something real with someone who shows up consistently. And if it works out, great. If it doesn't, I'll be okay. Because I've learned the most important lesson of all. I can survive heartbreak. I can rebuild. I can be happy on my own. Anything else is just a bonus. That night at Anthony's seafood restaurant feels like it happened to a different person now. In some ways it did. The Sarah who walked in there with that gift bag was broken and angry and desperate to make someone hurt the way she was hurting. The Sarah I am now is whole and peaceful and focused on building rather than destroying. Both versions of me were necessary. I had to be that angry woman to get to this peaceful one. So if you're going through something similar, if you've been betrayed and hurt and you're wondering how to respond, my advice is this. Do what you need to do to move forward. If that's a public confrontation, fine. If that's quiet dignity, also fine. If that's screaming into a pillow and eating ice cream for a week, perfectly valid. There's no right way to process betrayal. There's only your way, and as long as it gets you to the other side, it's the right way for you. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've connected with any part of this journey and want to support the channel as we work toward our goal of 1,000 subscribers, please hit that subscribe button. Sharing these experiences helps all of us feel less alone in our struggles. Take care of yourselves out there, and remember that you deserve honesty, respect, and love. Don't settle for less, no matter how scary it seems to walk away. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose yourself.